All right, we are live with Layne Performance, and today I'm going to be going over some Reddit posts. We're going to be helping people out with their technique. So we're going through Reddit, looking at the form check tag and seeing who we can help out today. So I've already got one pulled up, and I will admit I've looked at this one just a little bit, and I have read a few of the comments just to kind of see if we're going to be redundant or if there's anything we can help, because there were 12 comments when I pulled this one up. So, looking through it, looks like there are some things that we can address on this lift. I do want to first, before we even look at the lift, well, let's take a quick look at the lift and then look through the comments and kind of see what people are pointing out. And I'll give my thoughts on that. And then we'll go through some detail on this lift and see what could be improved. So let's take a quick look together. We'll play it full motion first. I don't know what all you guys can see. For me, that looks like it's a little bit forward, particularly you can see it on the catch. And so we're going to kind of look through and see why that is and what's going on. But really quick, let's look and see what kind of advice this guy's gotten from other people. Crying for the hardwood floors, yeah. That's kind of my first thought. Is this... And it looks like he's maybe ground level. Hard to tell. I hope it's ground level. Anyways. Okay, you're 90% of the way to a perfect snatch. Disagree, even though if the person's being honest, they say they're just trying it out because it looks fun. So if this is like the first time they've ever snatched something, that's pretty good. I kind of doubt that it is. There are a lot of mistakes that are maybe kind of minor, but they add up to what you saw, which I would not say anywhere close to 90% perfect snatch. It's not bad. It's not anywhere close to perfect. So form check, cover the bar a tad more with your shoulders. So I guess they're wanting them to lean out a little bit more of the bar with the shoulders. I think he's actually a little forward. We'll take a look at that on the setup and see if maybe that's an issue, but we'll get there. Arms are passive like change during the explosive extension, so he thought maybe pulled a little bit early. We'll take a look at that too. Hip and ankle mobility will reveal itself as you try higher loads. I think you'll see that even with lighter loads. I didn't see anything that stood out to me in terms of hip and ankle issues, so we'll take a look at that. Let's see. This person says they're nitpicking. We'll find some mistakes, I guarantee you. Not a bad power snatch. Okay, well, we'll talk about that because this is actually the comment I want to talk about the most. So this looks like a power snatch to me. Power snatch to snatch balance to me. Yeah, they're power snatching it and writing it down. I don't have a problem with that. I know some people do. I actually prefer it that way when it's light. Pull as high as you can and then ride into the squat to get used to riding it down and catching low. We can work other drills to work on actually catching low. But if you're just, say, and this person I think actually recommends just using the bar and catching it low, well, then you're not pulling and you're not learning how to pull the bar. And so we need that bar velocity and that bar height to be able to get under the bar. So I have a little bit of trouble with recommending just dropping under the bar without actually pulling it. So maybe we'll talk about that some. All right, so they're saying use your hips and upward initial pull momentum to get to the bar to the proper height rather than using your arms at all. Your arms should really only be activating once the bar is overhead. That is wrong. So we actually have the lift can be broken down to a couple different phases. And so we initially talk about the first pull, which is coming right off the floor up to about the knee level. We have a transition, which is about the knee level to the power position, which is when you start that second pull. Second pull is a powerful extension, jump, and shrug at the top. And then there's the third pull, which is actually pulling the bar as long as you can before turning it over and catching it. Now, the reason that you do that third pull, that actually is when you pull yourself down under the bar to the catch. We're not just dropping down. If you watch really good weightlifters who have a good third pull, they actually drop faster than they would just from gravity. So they're actually pulling against the bar as it comes up, and that's getting them under it quickly. So this idea that we're just passive as the bar goes overhead is incorrect. You want to be active, pulling the bar up into that catch. So let's continue with that comment. Anything before that's just simply grip and guidance until you reach lockout. No. If you hit pause the video where the bar hits the pelvis, you can see that not only are your legs not fully extended, but your arms are already bending as well. Okay, we'll take a look at the bent arms thing. That's right. You want to have your arms extended even right up to the very top of the shrug, and then they start to lead the bar. But this thing about your legs not being fully extended when the bar hits your pelvis, first of all, it shouldn't really hit your pelvis. We're going to brush, make slight contact with the pelvis, and your legs actually should be bent. You should be about 120 to 130 degree knee bend when the bar is at the crease of your waist, and then we extend vertically with our legs. So a couple things in this comment that I really disagree with. Now they're going to get into this whole idea of the power snatch versus a regular snatch. You aren't catching the bar below parallel, so I'd focus on snatching directly to the bottom position, even with the bar is just fine. I already said this, but I really disagree with that. You should be working on pulling the bar up, and we can work on other drills to get that catch low, but you're really not going to be able to really pull hard and pull yourself under the bar until it's pretty heavy. If you're just catching that bar low, say with just the bar, not enough weight, then really you're just kind of falling under the bar. You're not actually pulling. And so there is a debate with coaches. Should you teach getting under the bar, or should you teach pulling high? I like to pull high. It does delay the development of that full lift, but we get there eventually. Versus I see a lot of people who learn to just get under the bar at all costs, no matter what the weight is, and they never learn to pull up. And you get efficient with getting under the bar, and so you kind of get lazy, and it's really difficult to get your lifter to go back and then learn to pull after they've already learned to get under it, because then they're just going to get under it. So in the long run, I think that can be detrimental, even though they learn the full lift much quicker with the other method of getting under it. So I'm not doing too well with this comment. I'm disagreeing with about everything they're saying. Not specific to the movement. Well, yeah, they are. They may not be the full movement, but they will teach you in parts. Yeah, people are concerned about mobility. We'll take a look at that. From my quick look at this video, I'm not too concerned with mobility. I think the issues come in before the mobility would even kick in. There's some refining. Okay, sure. Are you my upstairs neighbor? That's pretty good. I've had some upstairs neighbors like that. You should keep trying it out, like 3 to 5 times a week for a couple hours a day. Not if you're just doing snatches. Hopefully you're changing it up a little bit and not doing that quite that long. Okay, so we're through all that. Let's take a look at the actual video. So I'm going to start it back toward the beginning, and I'm going to go through frame by frame and hopefully don't drive you all crazy. But we're going to get to this guy's setup here. From that, it looks okay. I think he's probably going to adjust a little bit before liftoff. Okay, there's liftoff. Now, one of the commenters was saying they need the shoulders in front of the bar a little bit more at this position. It's tough to see because we're a little bit offset here with the camera. It'd be easier if we were looking straight down the end of the bar, but this is okay. It looks to me like the shoulders are right above or slightly in front of the bar at this position. I don't think it's too bad. You can maybe bring these hips up a tiny bit and get the shoulders, an inch farther out in front of the bar. I don't think it's too bad, but you are going to see when he starts to lift off that the bar does travel forward a little bit. And I actually think if I play that, you'll see it a little better. Watch where this plate is and watch where it shifts as it lifts off the floor. Just slightly forward. And so what's happening there is the weight in his foot is shifting into the toes, and then the bar is actually traveling away from the body. So this whole lift is going to be forward, and we'll see that and what the consequences are. So that bar is going to come out and around the knee just a little bit is my guess. So it's coming out. It's not terrible, but it did come out a little bit. So this position's kind of my next critical position. We're at the knee. I would say the bar is maybe kind of far away from the knee here, and that's a consequence of being in the toes as you lift off the floor. Otherwise, it's not too bad. I mean, this could maybe a little bit straighter, but I'm not going to complain too much about that. We're really trying to push our feet into the floor as you lift off and push the knees back out of the way of the bar. It's not bad. Let's see. We're starting into the transition, so we finished the first pull into the transition. So we're trying to bring the knees back under the bar, but we need to keep the feet flat, and this is the problem here. So he's actually initiated his pull at this point. The bar is not at the crease of the hip or the power position, so we haven't finished the transition. It's about the knee bend you want, but a lot of what they're getting here is the heel coming up. So that's coming into the toes off the floor. The bar is already pulling you forward. Now you're into your toes. You should be about the midfoot here. You're going to go slightly towards your toe during the transition. We're going to get back to the ankle midfoot to drive for the second pull. So this is going to go pretty forward, I can already tell. Yeah, I'm kind of missing some frames here. Let's see. Okay, so here was where I would call the second pull. So at this point, the knee should actually still be kind of bent. So that more like a 120, 130 degree knee angle. We started that early pull, like I said. So pulling with the shoulders out in front of the bar. This is really where I want to see the pull initiate. So the shoulders are above, maybe even slightly behind the bar. Feet should still be flat, knees bent, and then we're exploding up. So after this is when I should see the heels pop up off the floor. So that early pull, and I think we're going to see the consequence of that in one of these frames. Let's see. Right here. So that early pull, bar's already going away from him. He kind of pops it into the hips, and now the arms are extended straight out in front. That bar is a good maybe foot to foot and a half in front of his torso at this point, the entire forearm length away from the torso. So it's kind of inefficient, and so now that bar is actually looping out and away. It's going to loop back, and you're going to see it get pretty far behind the head. And this is what's causing a lot of the issues with the catch. And a lot of people are pointing out mobility problems and things with the catch. I think that those issues are actually, or at least the appearance of those issues is actually being caused before the catch and through this pull. So the bar's out in front. It's going to loop back on. He's got to catch it and try to arrest that momentum backwards. And you see it just gets a little back, too far back. So shoulder speed probably a little bit forward, right over the ears. This is actually behind the head, so maybe a little bit too extended. And I think some of that's just trying to arrest that backwards momentum as it's swinging back in. So all that said, let's take one more look at it full speed and see if we can kind of pick some out. So a little flow, loops around, bounces off the hips, gets out in front. I want to see where the feet land. A little bit of jump back, so he's kind of jumping out from under, which is also exacerbating that, having to slow it down, and he's really trying to pull back into that position and then having to arrest it, and it gets a little too far back. So a couple issues there. Now, giving feedback on something like this, it's a little bit tricky because we're only looking at one lift and one angle, so you have to be kind of careful about that. And this, we make little mistakes. We make little mistakes in our setup. So are these consistent errors? I don't know. But this is something when I read other people's comments, and we're going to make a comment on this one. When I read other people's comments, they kind of jump to, and I guess we all kind of do this as coaches. We have our little things that we like to fix and things that we focus on. And so we try to bring that into every single lift. Here's what I try to do when I'm looking at lifts like this, or I'm giving feedback. What's the first error? So if we're looking at it off the floor like this, that first error he makes where the bar is actually going away right off the floor, that is causing the rest of it. And that doesn't necessarily mean, okay, you fix it off the floor and everything else is going to be great. But if you're already messing up off the floor, you're probably not going to be able to get into a good power position from a good transition, which means the pull and the catch, everything else it's a domino effect where everything else is off. So we need to keep that bar in a good position. So I'm giving feedback on something like this. I'm going to tell the person about their first error, and we're going to try to fix that and work on that. And then the rest will kind of follow. And then that's where you need coaching to come back. And now we've got to fix the next problem and the next problem and the next problem. And that continues even at the elite level. So I'm going to give my thoughts really quickly. I've got to be careful about wording this. I don't like to kind of critique other people's critiques. I try to avoid that and just give my own thoughts. So let's start off with a little bit of a compliment. Looks pretty good for a beginner. There. Let's say there are a couple of, I don't know, subtle or small errors. And I'm going to say they're minor errors, but they add up to a few problems. Is that nice enough? I think I'm being pretty nice. I'm a little worried. One reason that I'm pointing out it's pretty good for a beginner is a lot of the comments already are saying these are really good, 90% of the way to a perfect snatch, and that can kind of make people a little bit complacent. And you want to be sure that they understand, like, yeah, this is not bad. If this were my lifter, and let's say they've been lifting with me for a month or so, I'm going to be pretty happy with that snatch. And there's still a lot to work on. We're going to keep refining, but I'm going to say, whoa, not bad if I see that. So you want to be somewhat positive, but also like, hey, get across that there's some work to do. So the first big error that we're going to talk about, I'm going to give him the just coming off the floor. So I'm going to point out one of the commenters was talking about having the shoulders a little bit over the bar. We're going to say maybe to that. If I can type. So one of the previous commentators, let's just say comments. So I mentioned having the bar, having your shoulders a little bit more in front of the bar at the setup. And sorry if you're having to watch me type, but I think it's good we get these comments in. So a little bit over the bar at your setup. You might play around with this. So during the first pull, which is, some people don't know this terminology. Sorry, we've got a big truck going by. So the terminology I like to clarify during the first pull, which is from the floor to so if we go from floor to bar to the knee level, the bar goes slightly away from you, shifts towards your toe. Let's see. So focus. We're going to focus on keeping your weight through your midfoot. I like center of pressure better, but some people don't know what that means. So keep your weight. I'm going to put in parentheses, or center of pressure through the midfoot during the first pull. So if we're going to keep your weight in the center of midfoot during the first pull. So what that's going to do, this is going to help set up the rest where the bar is not going away. We're not getting pulled into the toes. Okay, so that's going to help out with that. If we can get to the knee there, then we're going to be a lot better off for the second pull. So I'm just going to say something like, set up your transition, which will get you in better position for the second pull. Okay, so that's the general idea of what I'm going to say. I'm going to go back through before I post this and actually flesh it out a little bit more and think about it a little bit more, make sure I'm communicating clearly. I like to be really clear about what parts of the lift I'm working on, because we have different terminology. And another thing that I notice is that people will give a cue like, keep your shoulders in front of the bar as long as possible. And people think that that's a cue for the entire pull, that entire floor all the way up through the jump and shrug. And so they end up jumping forward for their pulls. And we need to be really clear that that cue, hang on, I'm going to wait for this truck to go by again. I think they're doing the street cleaning. But we need to be really sure that that cue is specific for the different parts of the lift. So that cue applies off the floor and applies through most of the transition, but we actually want to straighten our torso up and get vertical and upright into the second pull and not have the shoulders out in front of the bar. So be careful. If you're giving advice like this, be careful that you know that the people understand which part of the lift that we're talking about. Okay? So I'm going to save this and finish that up for later. Let's see. Let me do this. I'm going to copy this over. I don't know what I have open in Word. Nothing. And I'll finish that up. You can go back later and take a look at that. What I want to do now is take a look at another lift. And this is one, I don't know what they're street sweeping out there. This is one I've actually already replied to. But I want to go over the things that I pointed out because it's an interesting one, because there are, again, some really subtle shifts that are happening on this one, and I think it exaggerates what we were talking about just now with those shoulders at the setup and how that can affect the rest of the lift. So let's take a look. I have already talked about this one, so I'm going to get to my messages here and pull it up. Here we go. So this guy says he's self-taught, and I'll say for self-taught, I think this is pretty good, even though I always recommend having a coach. But we're going to take a look at this. I'm going to play it again full speed, then we'll break it down. Grab a sip of water. Okay. So I think initially what everyone probably noticed is that catch looks a little funky, or maybe a lot funky. It's kind of unstable. He had to jump forward under the bar. And so we need to look at what's causing that. Let's watch this one more time, full speed. Overall, I mean, it's not terrible. Again, if this was someone that had been lifting with me for a month or so and they did this snatch, I'd be decently happy. But let's take a look at some things that might be happening here. So we're always going to start with the setup. We're always trying to find that first critical mistake. Now, this one, if you don't have kind of a trained eye for this 45-degree offset angle can be a little bit tough to wrap your head around. But what I see here is if we were to look straight down the bar, so if we were over here somewhere and we were looking straight down the end of that bar, I think what we would see is the shoulders are actually out in front. Or I'm sorry, are actually back behind the bar. Maybe directly over, but probably a little bit behind. And it already looks like he's falling back to me. Now, he's got long tibias, I'll give him that. So this can be a kind of difficult. But what he probably wants to do is drive those knees out over the bar a little bit more and lean out, get the hips a little higher. So the hips are pretty much at the same level as the knee here. You want those hips a little higher than the knee. You get that again by driving the knees out in front of the bar, driving the shoulders out over the bar. And that's going to be in a much better position to lift off straight up from the floor. In this position where his tibias are almost vertical, he's going to be leaning back against the bar. He's probably almost having to hold on to the bar just to maintain that position. He's trying to fall backwards here. And when we start to lift off, you're going to see that come into play. So here we go. By the way, 60 frames per second. Thank you. This makes this so much easier. So we're at the midfoot, and I can already tell, I don't know if you guys can really see this. Again, kind of having that trained eye is why you have to do this a lot and see these from all different angles. Definitely falling back. That weight has shifted back into the heels. And what happens here is you can't push into the ground. You can see his shoulders are now behind the bar, and you can't drive through the floor to get the knees back out of the way. You want those knees to extend, almost like a squat. So we're pushing the knees back and squatting the bar almost off the floor. And at this position, he's at a 90-degree knee angle. This should be the straightest your knees should be, will be during the lift right here, except for extension. So coming off the floor into the second pull, this should be the straightest your knees are during that whole portion. He's at 90 degrees here. So 90 degrees, falling backwards, weights on the heels, shoulders behind the bar, bars out in front. So we got several issues going on. Now it's going to continue. The knees kind of stop straight, and now we're doing a kind of what I call a back pull. So instead of continuing to push through the platform and use the legs, we're now having to lean back against the bar and use the back to pull to this position. The knees swing forward, but they don't really rebend. I mean, they can't. He was at 90 degrees, so they can't really rebend. So we end up with an inefficient pull off the toes. I can't remember, but I kind of doubt we're going to get a good extension here. Yeah, not really a full extension of the knees. That's not surprising. See a little bit of early arm bend. So this is also a little bit of an arm pull, and that's not surprising when the bar is out away from you and you're falling away from it. You kind of have to use your arms to pull it back in. That's why it's so important to keep that bar close and stay over it. Keep that weight between, or the center of gravity kind of between you and the bar. So the early arm bend, we're pulling with the arms. Oops, skipped a little too much there. He's pulling against it, although throwing himself back a little bit, and that's why you have to jump forward. That bar is out in front, you're throwing back. Now the bar is way out in front, you've got to jump forward to get under it. And that's where a lot of the catch issues come in. So he's kind of swinging himself forward to get under it. That bar's out in front, and he's having to push it back. So a heavier snatch, all the issues considered, when that bar swings out away from you, you've got to pull it back on yourself. There's not a really good chance of catching that. So you got to fix these other issues before you can really add any weight to the snatch. That's pretty much the most he's going to get out of his snatch right now. So let's go back. Just real quick recap. Main issues with this one, setup's a little off. So he's falling back from the bar. Needs to get over that bar a little bit, center the weight in the middle of the foot so you can drive through that platform. And you should be able to drive through the middle of your foot, maybe even slightly back toward your heel, all the way up through the knee. At this position, it should still be leaned out, and these knees should be almost straight at this point. Not quite straight, but a good 140, 150 degrees, maybe 160. So we're getting pretty close to straight here. And that's going to help that lift out a whole lot, keep it from being trapped back in the heels. I call this being trapped in the heels, when you can't extend and you can't get your knees back out of the way of the bar without falling backwards. So I guarantee you, if you were to hold this position and I walk up to him, I touch his shoulders, he's going to fall backwards. You've got to be really stable at this position or you're in trouble. Okay, so I hope that helps a little bit with that. Really quickly, let's see, did we get... All right, we haven't got any chats right now, so that's good. Okay. Let's go back to our weightlifting, and let's see if we can find... Ooh, we got some karma. Good. Let's go back to the thread, I think. I'm kind of new to Reddit, so I'm figuring out exactly the most efficient way to do these things. Let's see if we can find anyone else really quickly that we can go over. We'll do probably maybe one or two more today. First ever proper all lifting session. 70 kilograms. Give me some tips. This is a new one. We might be one of the first people to comment on this one. Okay, so let's see what we got. Now, I've got to say, he says this is first session. If these are really off and they look just really bad, I'm not going to give feedback. I'm looking for ones, people who are just starting out and they really aren't that great at it. There's going to be so much going on that it's not really going to be helpful to get advice this way. They need to seek out a coach. There's actually a video I saw this morning someone had posted, and it was like, yeah, you need coaching. There's just so much going on. As long as people are able to do the lift and it looks safe, I'm okay giving some feedback like this. That's always my advice. If you really want to get better at weightlifting, you've got to go ahead and spend the money and make that commitment and get a coach. Maybe a little self-serving plug, but that's what I think. All right, so let's just take a quick look and see if this is worth responding.
Let's try.
I can see a couple little mistakes. It looks like he's getting some feedback here. Let's see what we can see here. So setup looks pretty good to me. I can't really see the feet, but proper setup. We're going to have the shoulders for a clean. Our shins are going to be nearly vertical here, so much more so than the snatch, where I was saying you want your knees kind of out over the bar. Shoulders are going to be above, maybe slightly in front of the bar, so this looks really nice. Nice flat back. Hips we want usually right between our shoulders and knees, so this is not bad. Pretty good setup. I'd be okay with that. Now the hips, if I'm watching this, I want to see this torso angle stay the same. But what happened here, he's getting a little bit of a dynamic start, and the hips came up first. But this is actually a really good setup position here. I'm okay with this setup. So as long as we maintain this torso angle and this right here, as he lifts off the floor, as long as those hips don't keep coming up anymore, then I'm okay with it. Let's see. Pretty good. Yep, pretty good. So I'm good with that. We're past the knee. This is probably where we're going to see some issue. This is interesting. He's standing on a plate since he doesn't have shoes. I don't recommend this at all. Particularly, if you're doing a pull, maybe, but he's actually going and catching the clean, feet shift and everything else. Don't do this. That's my only thing. Don't do that. That's a little scary for the ankles. All right, so we're continuing. All right, so late on the transition here. So he's got to the knee position fine. Right as we get past the knee and get over the knee, and he just start driving the knees back under the bar to get a good transition. And he's just staying over it a little bit too long, just a little. So I would like, if I can get this frame here. Yeah, that's a little arm pull, so he's pulling it in a little bit. I would like to see the knees bending at this point on that frame. I would like to see the knees start to bend. Let's see. Does end up in an okay power position, maybe a little shallow, and that's from, again, that late transition. But we are at the second pull, the power position. I'm okay with this. Can maybe use a little more knee bend. The shoulders are right over the bar. I tend to prefer, with a lot of my lifters, to be slightly behind the bar at this point, just slightly, so that you have a tendency sometimes to throw yourself backwards, particularly if you're kind of out in front and the bar starts to travel out in front. I've just had better luck with my lifters if they're slightly behind the bar with the shoulders here, and that way they can pull the bar vertically. And it does, when you pull with the shoulders out in front, the bar tends to swing out some. So I'm okay with that power position for the most part. Might play around with trying to get the shoulders a little farther back. And actually, there you go. Okay, one more frame and he did it. So that's more what I like to see. A little bit more upright. Looks like he's good and balanced here. And let's see here. Pull. I mean, the main thing for me, we are going to see a little bit issue on the catch. And that's just being comfortable turning the elbows over. And really gets kind of sunk down in there. And you're going to see a little hitch here at the bottom where he starts to come up. But that's not bad. Really, I don't have a whole lot of super valuable feedback. Just starting that transition soon. You see a little hitch. He slows down. He pulls in just a little bit past the just a little hitch there. So I might give a quick comment there and just say, hey, you might want to clean that up just a tiny bit. But this guy, if this is really his first lifting session, like he says, I'm pretty happy with that. He should be pretty happy with that. I want to know who the coach is, because it looks like the coach is doing a pretty good job. So mostly there, thumbs up for me. I'll probably come back, circle around, just make that real quick observation about pulling that bar in. But other than that, not bad. So I'll be back. You guys can follow back if you want to and give me some upvotes. Just saying. So we'll come back to you. Let's look if we can find one more real quick. Let's take a quick look at this one. What is this? This is the one I said earlier I wasn't going to give feedback on. And actually most of the comments on this one were the same. Like, hey man, go get a coach. You're not safe. And that's my advice too. Let's take a quick look just to kind of see. And not trying to rag on this guy, but you know, you should kind of be a little more self-aware that, yeah, you need a coach for that. It's pretty rough. So sorry if you're watching this, but all right, we did that one. Let's see, any more form check on here? That's probably going to be a squat. Best snatch so far, felt really nice. How many comments are on this one? Sometimes that's an issue. 4. Okay, let's take a look. Okay. Now, by this point, you guys should be able to see what's happening here pretty easily. Hopefully, because we've been talking about this all morning. This is a really common error, and you're seeing it here in these videos. Watch where that bar goes right off the floor. You see it? Right off the floor, we're going to go forward, around, loop back in. And it's light enough that he's able to kind of get a decent pull and catch out of it, although it's a little forward. Let's take a look at the comments on this one. Let's see what people are noticing and if we can add anything to this discussion. So, again, mobility. Everyone's like, mobility. I don't see huge mobility issues here. I think people are just looking at, oh, power snatching, so assuming that we can't get in a full squat. That's not the case. Power snatching is fine when you're learning. I teach my guys this all the time. Pull up, catch it high, ride it down. We're working on being smooth, catching, not adjusting the feet, but just catching, immediately squatting it. But if you're just working on squatting under, you're not going to learn to pull, and you're not going to get strong in your pull. So this whole thing, people saying this is mobility, it's not mobility. It could be, but it's just because you're catching a power snatch instead of a full snatch does not mean it's necessarily a mobility issue. So I catch my breath. That makes me upset. Okay. Biggest thing you need to fix is first pull. Perfect. Yep. First pull. Directly at the floor, the bar starts swinging away from you. Hard to tell from this angle, but looks like you need to start with your hips slightly higher to keep your shoulder joint over and slightly in front of the bar. Beyond that, you need to actually create tension against the bar before starting. I'm too lazy to explain how to do that right now, but I'm sure there are plenty of videos to teach you how. Okay, I want to take a look at that. It's absolutely correct. It's that first pull that's messed up. Maybe I can give some advice on that if no one else did. Yeah, it just immediately shifts into the toes. I'm not necessarily seeing the tension thing. I mean, he's under tension there. Now, there's some truth to that. You do kind of want to be almost pulling against the bar before you lift off. At least most people, particularly snatch. If you don't have great mobility to be in your start position, you might end up pulling up against the bar just a little bit. We call it taking the slack out. And that's not bad advice. although it's tough to see from this video if that's actually happening. It looks like at least right as he starts to separate from the floor, there's pretty good tension there. So I'm not, I'm not going to nitpick too much. Maybe that's an issue, but I'm not super convinced there. Start with your hips slightly higher to keep your shoulder joint over the bar. Yeah, maybe a little bit, but again, not. That's not a bad start position. At least it could maybe be adjusted a little bit, but I think probably the issue is more just learning to drive through the midfoot and keep the weight out of the toes as you lift off. So we might be working on some first pull deadlifts or something like that. Okay. There we go. Power snatches. This is the same person from the other one. The PM me butt stuff right now. I think that's what RN stands for. So I don't know. I'm gonna be careful with their advice. Let me go back. I don't know what just happened there, but we'll go back. So same person. They're obsessed with this whole power snatching thing. The bar meeting the pelvis thing. You'll see your knees or arms are slightly bent still. Could mean you're not using much hip drives. You could be. Again, when the bar gets to the crease of the waist, the knees should still be bent. Yes, the arms should be straight, not bent, but the knees should be bent. And I don't know why this person is on this whole knee should be straight when the bar is at your pelvis. Your knees should still be bent. That's your power position. Until your bar catches overhead, arms should be, yeah. So that's the person I disagreed with on the other thread. Disagree with them once again here. I usually don't like to be this direct, but that person should stop giving advice. They don't really know what they're doing. Okay. I only seem to be power snatching at the moment, not feeling the need for depth, right? Trying to focus on getting the technique right for loading up. And I think once I put the weight in the bar, I'll get hip drive will be more dominant. I usually military press this weight, so make the bar be forced into your tip. Okay, so actually, yeah, the guy who posted this list, I actually agree with him. Shouldn't, with this light of a weight, shouldn't be catching it that low. It's if you're doing that, you're not getting the benefit of the pull and actually working on the pull. So in this case, I think the guy posting is actually smarter than this person, which isn't saying a whole lot. If you can't snatch full depth with an empty bar or PVC, adding weight will probably only cause injuries due to lack of mobility. Again, I don't know how many times I can say this. The power snatching in these issues are not from lack of mobility. It's because they don't have to catch it low. You catch it low by pulling yourself under the bar, which means you have to have enough weight on the bar to pull against to get yourself under. This is driving me crazy. I need to just stop worrying about it. Let's just accept that person doesn't know what they're looking at. All right, I tell you what, we don't have any questions or anything. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let's just do a real quick browse and see if we can find one more quick one we can work on. If not, we will call it a day. Or maybe there'll be something else fun that we can look at. Shoes. I don't want to talk about shoes. Programming recommendations. Does anyone want to hop on here and recommend me? Maybe I'll give you a little bonus for it. All right, 93 kilogram clean and jerk after back injury. Let's take a quick look at this, see what we got. Okay. Okay, there are a couple of things I want to hit on that jerk. The pull, there's no comment, so we might hop on this one and make a comment here too. We've talked already enough about the pull, and you see this common thing where people are pulling forward, and this is no exception. Let's see. We're getting this power position. Look at the heels. They're coming up. Arms are bent a little bit, looks like. And that is coming from pulling the bar in here. So really aggressively pulling the bar to the hip. And that's going to, what that does is that pulls you up into your toes usually. And then, so when you go to that catch, you have to, it's going to be out in front, and you can kind of see, if I can get a good view here, watch where the feet are. A little bit of jump forward, looks like, on that one. If I watch it full speed, you're going to see it be out in front. He's got to reach out for it and kind of pull it back in just a little bit. It's not bad, but it is there. And on clean and jerk, that's not as big of an issue. You can get away with that, you know, up to a point on your clean and jerk. You can't get away with that in your snatch. If you're going heavy on snatch and it's out in front, you're going to miss that every time. Now let's take a look at this jerk. So front rack position from this angle looks decent. Now, what I would like to see here, let's take a look at the brace here. Really throwing that head back, and I think that might be causing some things, but let's see. So when you're in that position, you see that head really snap back on this lift. You want to pull your chin. We're shrugging up into the bar, creating some space so we can breathe, but we want to push up in that bar and then pull our chin back. So I'm not throwing my head back and looking up the ceiling. That's going to cause you to throw yourself backwards. You want to just pull that chin back out of the way of the bar so it can stay close to your face and drive straight up. If you throw your head back, you're going to create some issues. This drive, heel is up off the floor, so he's falling forward a little bit. We want to brace, shrug up into the bar, and this dropping the hips straight down, driving the knees forward. I always like to think about starting this move with my knees. It's really just a knee-driven drive. So bending the knees to drop, hips drop straight down toward the heels, and then we drive straight back up. If you get back into your toes, that bar is going to drive forward and away from you. It's going to make that split catch really difficult. Depth is okay. We'll take a look one more time full speed and see if he kind of gets stuck or kind of how the speed is on this. Driving, throwing the head way back instead of pulling the chin back. Now let's see the split. Driving the feet. It looks like, okay. Got the bar pretty much over. You want that bar right over your head. Maybe it's hard to tell from this angle. It probably is okay. You want that bar right over your shoulders, driving through the hips, and you feel like the weight's dropping right down into the floor here. Now, to me, it's a little bit of a difficult angle. You can see those heels way up. So he's not really driving all the way through and probably falling a little bit forward. And what you see with that is this back foot reaches way back compared to the front foot. So the back foot splits way out, front foot's not going as far forward. And that's kind of how he's arresting that forward motion from the bar. And so we really need to work on driving straight down, straight up, and then trying to split the feet evenly so that they travel about the same distance forward and back. And that's part of why this kind of crashes back and forces that heel down. Yeah. So yeah. Let's take another look at it full speed. Let's see if we can see all that. So again, clean's not bad, but he does pull it in a little bit and bounces it out. And let's see that jerk. We're going to fall a little bit into the toes. Yeah, it falls forward, and he's got to kind of swing it back and rot back on that back foot to try to save it from falling forward. So, a couple of issues there. Maybe I'll come back through, make a comment. Again, if you're watching, we'll come back through. Actually, that's on fluff, not form check, so we won't. But it's still a good one to kind of take a look at and get a look at that jerk. This one's kind of caught my eye. I want to see what this is. What is leg drive, and how can I get more of it, especially for the snatch? Is it jumping up the barbell by pushing through the midfoot, or is it how equally fast I extend and get on my toes from power position? I'm trying to do this method. I'd have to look up the method. extend the power position, throw my shoulders violently backwards. No. Nope. And this is actually, he says, like a kettlebell swing. I hate kettlebell swings. If you're a weightlifter, do not do kettlebell swings. Kettlebell swings are not the same motion as weightlifting at the hips. So kettlebell swings, you're taking the kettlebell between your legs and you're throwing your hips forward, extending your hips, and then the kettlebell continues away in front of you. Is it not at all like the extension that we get from weightlifting? I mean, you do get the hip extension, which is the same, but you're not really extending the knees and the ankle like a weightlifting movement. And so a kettlebell swing is mostly horizontal force. You're extending the hips and pushing the kettlebell horizontally. There's a little bit of vertical, but a lot of it's horizontal to push it away. Weightlifting is mostly, if not all, vertical. We're trying to get that bar into the position where we can extend vertically and move that bar up, straight up. And so I hate kettlebell swings for weightlifters. I'm not saying they're a terrible exercise and never do them, but if you're a weightlifter, they're a terrible exercise and don't ever do them. They're not the same as a pull. So this guy says, I just feel like I'm not using the strength from my whole legs. If all I'm doing is just extending fast from power position, which has a very short range of motion. It's difficult for me. I might go back and read this one off air again and maybe look up this method they're referencing, because I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding exactly what they're asking here. But power position we'll describe really quickly. When we get to power position, our knees are 120 to 130 degrees. Shoulders are above or slightly behind the bar. We're going to drive. Our weight should be through our midfoot, maybe back to the ankle a little bit. So we're going to drive through the ankles, extend the ankle, hip, and knee, and then powerful shrug right at the top. We're not throwing our hips into the bar. We're not trying to, some coaches will say hump the bar. We're trying to get brush. We're going to brush, if we're in a snatch, we're going to brush our the crest of our waist, or right the fold of our waist. If we're doing a clean, we're going to hit the middle of the thigh to maybe the mid-upper thigh. We're just going to brush that position and extend up as much as possible. So we're not throwing the hips into the bar. All throwing the hips into the bar does, it makes you feel faster because you have a lot of horizontal momentum, or a lot of horizontal motion, and that's not really resisted by the barbell, so you can move really quickly horizontally. And so people feel like they're super fast when they're throwing their hips in the bar. I think that's why a lot of people coach it and like to do it that way. But all that's doing is pushing the bar away from you and out. So we're not pulling the bar up. Remember, our limiting factor with weightlifting is the bar height and the bar velocity, which are related. So we have to get as much vertical force on the bar to pull it as high as possible. And we want to minimize that horizontal displacement because that's actually going to make it harder to get the bar in the position to where we can catch it. So any horizontal motion of the hips or horizontal force produced by the hips is actually detrimental. Got to get in the position where you can pull straight up. Okay, so kettlebell swings, no. We're not driving our hips in the bar, we're pulling up. Some of the advice here, let's take a quick look. Pretend your feet are glued to the floor, stuck in quicksand, you have to jump to get out. Thrust of the legs, don't throw your shoulders back, tuck your chin, be as vertical. Okay, so not really bad advice. I would say it's not very detailed. The thrust of your legs in the ground or floor, some coaches now are saying punch the floor with your legs, very explosive, powerful. I think that's an okay cue. I've tried it a couple times. CF Stark, hey, is this is he in what, Tallahassee? I don't know, he shows up on Instagram sometime. Says I'm a technical idiot. Why respond here? Anyways, let's see. Large, slightly heavy box where pants are short. Okay, so this is like a kind of a thing he's doing. You know, one thing you can do, I think, I'm not going to read this whole thing. Okay, yeah, like jumping vertically. That's kind of interesting. Like jumping out of almost like jumping out of a phone booth or something. Box jumps can help for sure with learning that explosiveness and how to put effort into that position and drive through the ankle and the heel. Not the heel, toward the heel, through the ankle. Could you draw a diagram? That's how I feel. Who posted this? Let me see. We'll look at that. Trotsky. Let's see. Short, powerful extension of the knee plus bar contact. Maybe we'll take a look at that some other time. Pulling your shoulders behind the bar. If you're throwing yourself back, they're saying if you pull your shoulders back behind the bar, you lose power. If you're throwing your body back and throwing your hips forward, yes. If you're keeping your hips over your feet and your shoulders over your hips so that you're tense there, then no, I disagree. Your shoulders can be slightly behind the bar at your pull. It is a question of how far behind, and also are you continuing to rotate your shoulders back as you pull. It needs to go slightly behind and then vertical. Should feel long. So I think this person here, hinge at the hips. If you're hinging before your shoulders getting behind, you're losing power. You'll start to actually hinge at the hips. And this is again where terminology comes in. The power position should feel very long. I'm having trouble understanding exactly what they mean. The power position, are they combining that transition into power position? If so, I think I agree with this statement in a way. But then they say if you're hinging before, and I don't know what they mean by before, your shoulders get behind, you're losing power. I don't know if that's referring to the transition. If so, I disagree. So some of these comments you have to word really carefully, or they can get lost. Check how the shoulders only get behind the bar at the very top of the extension. Yeah, we'd have to look at that. That's probably okay advice. Don't worry about toes or ankles. There's no calf raise in weightlifting. At the very top of the pull, yes, you should actually drive up onto your toes and continue to push through the floor, through the toes. So while I would say it's not a primary thing, an actual calf raise, it does happen from that full extension at the ankle. Okay. Yeah, flat-footed pulls, feeling balanced. Yeah, maybe. I've done a few of those, and they're kind of interesting, but I don't know how well they translate, because you actually have to stay on your keep your feet flat. You actually have to decelerate a little bit at your pull, instead of actually accelerating and exploding into that pull. And so I don't know how well they translate. Maybe as a warm up and kind of, like I said, a form check and make sure you're not off balance. But as a training tool, I'm not a huge fan of the flat-footed pulls. Okay, so we got some interesting stuff there. We've actually talked about a good part of the lifts, so hopefully you guys picked up some stuff and learned a couple of things. And I'm going to go back through and make my comments and make sure that they all make sense. And so if you want to go back through and add on to anything I've said, or you want to upvote me, you want to recommend me for online training with a couple of these people who are looking for it, I'll be okay with that. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all on the next live stream.